President Stephen Knapp, Provost Stephen Lerman, Vice Provost for Diversity and Inclusion, Dr. Terry Harris Reed. I'd like to welcome all of you to George Washington University Lloyd Heck Marvin Center. My name is Mike Tapscott, DC native, for those of you, appreciate that. But I wanted to share with you quickly that this program is sponsored by the Black Student Union, our Black Women's Forum, our Black Men's Initiative, our director of the program for the Black Men's Initiative, George Rice, my associate director behind me. Please give a round of applause. I'm also seeing our Vice President for Safety, Darrell Darnell. Please welcome him as well. We're glad to have him here on our campus. I'm currently the director of the Multicultural Student Services Center, and we've had the honor of sponsoring this event here tonight. Two quick announcements. If you have your cell phone charger plugged into a wall, please remember it. And if you had anything that goes to the lost and found, you'll have to contact our University Police Department. Of course, with Brother Darnell here, maybe not. Okay. Now, we're going to get down to the business of the program. I'm going to get out of your way and just welcome Dr. Boyce Watkins. Thank you.
What's happening? We are here the Sunday after Thanksgiving on the day of a big Redskins game. So I am not the smartest Negro on the planet right now when it comes to planning, but we are here because there are quite a few of us in our community who still give a damn. And I applaud you for that, and I appreciate you for that. I want to say, first of all, thank you so much to the university for hosting us and allowing us to hold this event here. This is the third New Paradigm Forum that we've held this year. The goal of the New Paradigm Forum is to bring ideas from all perspectives in our community, lay them all out on the table, to decentralize Black leadership, if you will. Black leadership is a lot deeper than Jesse and Al. It goes back to what we all do in our homes. In fact, Dr. Wilmer Leon always says that Black leadership starts in your living room. How do you lead your family? How do you lead your children? How do you lead the community in the space in which you live? So all of us are Black leaders, if you ask me, and that's what I think Black leadership should be in the 21st century. Now, if you think about where we are, and you think about the community in which we live and the problems that we see, we also have to look at the hope that exists in our community. Janks just showed me literally an hour ago that the Black male graduation rate is actually higher than it's been in a very long time. In fact, the dropout rate was, I think, 8.1%, down from double digits 10 years ago. So there are lots of rays of hope and potential and opportunity in our community that we can't overlook. We can't look at this as a doom and gloom scenario. At the same time, we have to think about why all of us play a role in dealing with what we're experiencing right now. When you look around and you see that mass incarceration has absolutely obliterated the Black family in America. If you look around and you see what's going on in the educational system, if you look around and you see what's going on with economic inequality, where Black unemployment is about as bad as it was during the March on Washington in 1963, we know that we have a lot of work to do. And I would argue also that in order to understand the purpose and the reason that we do the things that we're doing right now, in order to understand, I think we have to look at the first runaway slave. The first runaway slave was not the most popular slave on the plantation. We like to glorify and glamorize what that must have been like, but it wasn't fun to be the first person on the plantation who wanted to be free. You probably didn't have any friends. Your best friends probably told on you. You had a lot of people that claimed that they loved you, that gave you good advice to tell you, you better not try to do that. Just go get a good job in the house with the master and you'll be comfortable and you'll be safe. And we also have to realize that that first runaway slave probably didn't succeed. And so when that person was brought back to the plantation, bloody and beaten and burning, or and whatever else they've done to that person, there was always that Negro standing over top of them saying, I told you so. I told him not to do that. And so we have to realize that while we might glamorize that experience and the decision to break through a system that's designed to oppress you, you have to realize that it doesn't always work out the first time you try, and it doesn't always work out in the generation in which you try it. But we have to understand that even though that first runaway slave probably didn't succeed, that individual planted the seed of freedom that existed in his children and grandchildren. That's what led the other person to say, well, maybe there is something wrong with this system. Maybe there is a way for me to get out of this system. And so if you really look at it closely, you realize that you can't have the first black president without the first runaway slave. So what we really are a pack of runaway slaves. We're looking at the plantations on which we live, the situations that we work in, the discrimination we face in the workplace, the things we see in our communities, and we want something better. And so when you go out and you talk about liberating your community, making your community better, people look at you like you're crazy. When we confronted the rapper Lil Wayne and killed his endorsement deal with Mountain Dew 6 months ago, people called me a hater. You hating on that dude trying to make his money. You hate rappers. You hate this, you hate that. I said, no, it's not that I hate you, Lil Wayne. It's just that I love my children more than I like your lyrics. And you agree with me that the messages that you are spitting out into our community are not helpful to our kids. Nothing great has ever been accomplished by a group of people who sat around getting high and drunk every day. So this gathering is the third one. The first one we did was in Chicago. Minister Louis Farrakhan joined us. And I love his ideas because Minister Louis Farrakhan, like him or not, he's one of the freest black men in America. He's done things with black men that nobody else can do. We went to New York City. Dr. Cornel West joined us. And again, if you ask my opinion, I think Dr. Cornel West is the closest thing we have right now to Martin Luther King Jr. And they hate him just like they hated Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. right before he died. Dr. Mark Lamont Hill, today Dr. Steve Perry's here, Dr. Wilma Leon, Latan Thomas, who is formerly with the Washington Wizards, and Dr. Tawana Freeman, Janks Morton, and just people that I wanted to bring to you to have what I would call a politically incorrect conversation about what it's going to take to save our communities. I'm not here to fit this into a liberal box. This is not a conservative box. This is not Democrat, Republican. This is about us, for us, by us, and that's all that really matters to me. So that's all I want to say, and I want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for those of you that did come out. Consider me a friend. We will remain connected forever. And understand this, there will probably not be a day in our lifetime that we look outside into the black community and see that everything that we're working for has finally borne fruit. We're not going to look outside and see the sun is shining, that another baby didn't get shot today, or somebody else didn't go to prison, or some kid didn't get educated. That's not going to happen in our lifetime. We have to accept that we are fighting a battle that's going to look like a losing battle for a very long time. But just like that first runaway slave, we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for our children's children. And that's what I want you to hold on to today. So without further ado, I would like to bring up Dr. Wilma Leon.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you, boys. As I was thinking about my comments, I hate technology. As I was thinking about my opening remarks in terms of saving our community and what I wanted you all to be able to take away from this conversation this evening, to me, it really comes down to this. There's a very popular narrative out there that's been constructed primarily by the dominant culture, and it perpetuates a very unfortunate stereotype. And unfortunately, there are some of us that do play into it. And that narrative is, that stereotype is that we just don't care. We don't care about education. We don't care about our families. We don't care about our communities. When I say that some of us play into the stereotype, some of us do. But unfortunately, in too many circumstances, the anecdotal and the negative stereotype are used to describe and to caricature our people. We do care about our families. We are great fathers, we are great husbands, mothers, parents, wives. We do care about educating our children. We do care about working every day to control our communities and to protect our communities. And we have a very, very, very long documented history of such. How many of you all have seen the film 12 Years a Slave? And for those of you that haven't, you really, really need to see that incredibly powerful film. How many of you all have read the book? Those of you who have seen the film and haven't read the book, you really need to read the book, and those of you, everybody needs to read that book. Particularly if we're in the holiday season, give it as a Kwanzaa gift. Give it as a stocking stuffer, because it is an incredibly powerful narrative. There's one element in the book that I wish had received more attention, and that was Solomon Northrop's focus on family. Now, he was born in 1808, 205 years ago, 189 years after those first 20 and some odd so-called indentured servants disembarked from that Dutch man of war in Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. And he writes in chapter 1 the following: "From the time of my marriage to this day, the love I have borne my wife has been sincere and unabated. And only those who have felt the glowing tenderness a father cherishes for his offspring can appreciate my affection for my beloved children, which have since been born to us. This much I deem appropriate and necessary to say, in order that those who read these pages may comprehend the poignancy of those sufferings I have been doomed to bear." What Solomon Northrop was doing was he was placing his struggle to regain his freedom into a context, the family context. That's what kept him sane amidst those 12 years of insanity. His need to be a father to his children and his need to be a husband to his wife. That's what motivated him and kept him from accepting his plight and struggling until he was eventually free. Now, as the dominant culture attempted to destroy our nuclear family, the structure of our nuclear family through slavery, through separation of parent and child, husband and wife, and made it illegal for us as people to marry, we adapted. We formed the extended family, the surrogate, and the communal structure. Grandparents took in grandchildren. Surrogate aunties and uncles looked after other folks' kids. Communities placed their collective arms around individuals and families to instill discipline, bestow love, and provide support. A huge problem facing us today is that now our communities are under siege from mass incarceration, under and unemployment, wealth disparities, disproportionate impact of subprime lending, all of the things that so many of us are either victimized by or at least very familiar with. In our prisons in the late 70s and 80s, America shifted from a rehabilitative model to a strict incarceration model. The introduction of tons of crack cocaine and weapons into the black community and resulting drug wars was documented by Gary Webb of the San Jose Mercury News and articulated by Congresswoman Maxine Waters. The political response, the solution to a rising crime rate in the mid-80s was the mass incarceration model, which was really no more than a war on the black male, removing him from the community, from the family, and branding him with the stigma of felon. Today, the fastest growing demographic in prison is women, and particularly black women. So here's the takeaway. Yes, our communities are under siege, and too many of our families are struggling, but with Solomon Northrop, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, to Ms. Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker, and the Deacons of Defense, to the members of the panel that I'm about to introduce, prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that we are a resourceful people. We are a resilient people. And what the dominant culture fears most, we are a brilliant and a powerful people, and our beautiful history is evidence of that. I mentioned the panel, so let's bring them up. Our first panelist is the principal consultant for Tawana Freeman and Associates, an active consultancy in the greater Washington, D.C. metro area, the creator of the Black Life Coaches Network, a successful life coach, management consultant, inspirational and motivational speaker, and advocate for young women. She is the co-author of the award-winning Purposeful Action, 7 Steps to Fulfillment, which reveals a seven-step method for identifying and effectively pursuing personal and professional goals. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Tawana Freeman. Our next panelist is, without question, the most prolific African-American filmmaker of his generation that 90% of African Americans have never heard of. He is a groundbreaking international and award-winning documentarian, a founder of Iago Entertainment Group. He states, the company came into existence to reflect both the conscious and unconscious soul of Black America. He has been in the entertainment industry for more than 20 years and is a much sought after teacher, lecturer, communicator, and motivational speaker. Please welcome James Morton. Our next panelist is more than an athlete. He's been called a gentle giant, a rebounder with a cause, the poet. He defies the stereotype of the apolitical athlete and plants his roots in his budding literary career with the conviction of a Bill Russell and the poetic finesse of Muhammad Ali. He is a recipient of numerous awards. He has started a fatherhood movement in which he goes from city to city, holding panels and town hall meetings to discuss fatherhood. In each city, he recruits different celebrities to join him in inspiring an entire generation. Please welcome Mr. Econ Thomas. Our next panelist, heart pumps passion and produces positive change. He is the founder and principal of what U.S. News and World Report has cited as one of the top schools in the country, Capital Preparatory Magnet School in Hartford, Connecticut. Capital Prep has sent 100% of its predominantly low-income, minority first-generation high school graduates to four-year colleges every year since its first class graduated in 2006. He's a strong advocate of personal and civic responsibility in all aspects of life. His secrets to success and calls to action are revealed in his new book, Push Has Come to Shove, Getting Our Kids the Education They Deserve, even if it means picking a fight. Dr. Steve Perry. And you all know our convener, Dr. Boyce Watkins. So what we decided to do, instead of having each of the panelists give an opening statement, we decided that we would start this with questions and let them go at it from there. So the first question is for Dr. Tawana Freeman, and the question is, yes, you're the first one. I had good home training, ladies first. What can be done within families to help our children see that fighting or other negative physical behavior as their main coping skills is not the way to resolve conflict?
How many of you, by show of hands, saw the video Sharkeisha? Okay, so I was born in 1970, and we fought, but we didn't have video cameras. So we know we've had that, right? At the end of the day, the bottom line to all of it, the way to help our young people to resolve issues without being physical is to first let them know that the consequences by videotape these days, the consequences could serve you some time. That's the first thing. You need to get real quick. This young lady will be, or could potentially find herself in jail. With that being the case, that is a perfect model from this point further that you all can remind every last single one of the youth that you influence, that if unless you want to have a Sharkeisha charge, you may want to look or reevaluate how you engage in confrontation, negative confrontation. So you point real issues out, give real life examples. The other thing that you do, I would recommend, as those that are in this room, anytime and every time you see young people engaging in conversation that encourages and or causes one to believe that it is socially acceptable to argue and fight your brother and your sister in that way and disrespect each other in that way, you call them on it. You see, everybody that's in this room, I don't think you're the ones that we're necessarily talking about. You are the ones that are actually in it. What we are here in this room are people who are about change. So with that being the case, we're talking about you identifying something and addressing it. You see something and you take action to do something about it. So when you see it, you address it. So you point out the issue, give them a real life example, and then you turn around and encourage them to be more respectful to one another, being accountable to one another as brothers and sisters in this community. And those are just two basics. And I'll just stop there.
Anybody want to?
Yeah, I saw the Sharkeisha video.
Go ahead.
And it was, I don't know if anybody else felt as sick and disgusted by what you saw as I did. I mean, it was interesting because it also made me think about what media has kind of done to exacerbate the wrong value systems with kids. And it's not going to go away, right? World Star Hip Hop makes probably $10–20 million a year running these videos and making these kids into overnight celebrities. I went to Sharkeisha's Twitter account, and I actually tweeted at her, and I saw that she had 25,000 Twitter followers and was really embracing the celebrity of what she did. And you know, and it's also interesting because you see in terms of media, you also have these basketball wives shows which treat women, young women, or teach them how to interact in very unhealthy ways. And you know, so I think that really, to some extent, we know our kids are already being educated by what they're hearing on the radio, what they're seeing on TV, what they're seeing on the internet. That's an education. Anything that's entering into their brain that they're absorbing is part of their education. So I say that we have to offer a counter-education. We have to be just as diligent, just as angry, just as willing to pick fights as Steve does. And that's why I love Steve, because Steve will pick a fight for his kids. We have to pick fights over this in terms of understanding that if we don't approach the education of our children with the same energy that the enemy is educating our children, then we're going to lose this battle. So this isn't really a fight or a war that's really built for kind, passive people. This is a war that's really built for warriors.
Jenks? Yeah. Oh, you were smiling and nodding. I just wanted to be sure that I didn't move on before you.
It's the Hallelujah praise chorus, and of course being on the filmmaker side and being in the media, we just know the power of what these images have done to our perception of what is acceptable behavior. So this is where, whatever, y'all gonna get mad, but it is what it is. You know, Sharkeisha's not my problem. Sharkeisha's mom and dad is my problem. So I'm real guarded in what I do in working with young people and knowing that the outcomes that we see with them, yes, they have to own up at a certain age, but most of the time, they're a direct reflection of the lack of socialization by a generation who let them down. So I say this all the time, and it gets me in trouble. I really don't believe we have a black youth problem in our community. We have a black parent problem. And until our generation owns up to what we did not do for these kids, then the Sharkeishas are going to keep coming, the Little Waynes are going to keep coming, the Little Greasy, Little Cheesy, and Little Measy are going to keep coming. and it's going to take a maturation of the baby boomers first before any real significant impact can be made on these young people's lives. So thanks.
First, if I can, I wish you could see what I see, how amazing you look on a Sunday night that we have come together to have this conversation. Can you give yourselves a round of applause? we won't all get to know you this evening, and you've heard some of our backgrounds and bios, but really you are what makes this whole thing matter. We are at a point where we've lost 2 generations and counting. The report from the front lines is bad. We're getting beaten up real badly by ourselves, really. It's our own inactivity. It's our comfort with the uncomfortable reality of children walking around dressed or undressed in the public sector in ways in which just a generation ago they wouldn't have allowed you to see them in their own home. We've lost a lot. We don't know what we lost. You know, we can sit and have a polite conversation, but the blunt truth is that we've messed up. It doesn't have to stay this way, regardless of what your faith conviction is, but it doesn't have to stay this way if we decide that it isn't going to be this way any longer. If we're going to stare the ugly truth in the face and say, I did this, everyone's going to raise their own hand and say, you know what, I probably could have called my brother who doesn't take care of his son, and I could probably called him and said, you know, before you come over for Thanksgiving and bring nothing that we want, why don't you bring your child? Each one of us could do something, right, if we reach inside ourselves, because this young lady is the symptom. She's the blood on the dress. There's a cut somewhere, and it's deep. And so we're here this evening to have a conversation about solutions. And in my sphere, it's education. That's what I do. And I believe that you can't get out of this situation, regardless of your socioeconomic status, until you have an education. Not just go to school, but learn something. And you can't learn something in places where learning isn't occurring. It's hard to learn the lessons that we need to learn in what essentially are prisons, baby prisons. Places that the people who work in them would never send their own children, let alone leave anything behind that they don't want there from day to day. And so from my sphere, this is a conversation about what we can do in the public sector where education is something that's supposed to be compulsory and supposed to be a human right. We know that everything that is good in life gets better when you get more education. Dr. King said that in 1967 that we were 50% of a man. He said everything that was good, we have half of. And everything that is bad, we have twice as much of. Can't keep telling this story. It just can't keep being. We got to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And start to make the changes tonight. Because there's too much power in this room for us to walk out of here the same. That you're just rubbing up against somebody with this much juice in this room. You can't leave here. So if we can make the commitment tonight to promise ourselves we ain't leaving here how we came. It's going to be better tonight because we're going to make it better. Then I think we'll get much closer, and this won't be just conversations.
Absolutely.
There's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. But what happens when the entire village is afraid of all the children? And I think that's where we are today. My passion is working with young people. So I want to go and speak with them and hear how they're feeling and have them bounce ideas off of me. Not just talking at them, but also listening to them. You know, they get a lot of criticism all the time. They'll get that from everywhere. You know, criticize how they talk, how they dress, how they act, how everything, you know what I mean? But sometimes they don't feel that they're being heard. And I think there's such a disconnect right now from 2 generations. And when you ask them, you see how much of a disconnect it really is. And I'll say this real quick. I won't spend too much time on it. But young people respond to respect. There's a big thing with young people who feel disrespected. A lot of bad stuff happens from that point on, once the disrespect happens. They don't feel that the older generation respects them at all. So if you're coming into a situation where an older person is criticizing you and you don't feel that they are respecting you, then you can't hear anything that they say at all. Now, it's interesting because when we're doing these panels in different places across the country and talking with young people, there's a lot that they have inside. You know what I mean? If you can get past their exterior. See, sometimes as adults, when the package isn't the way that we want it to be presented, then we want to just throw the whole thing away. Like, we can't even see them. We don't like the way they're dressing or their hair or you know, their clothes or anything like that. And they feel that rejection. They do. And I think one of the issues that we have is that we're not embracing our young people the way that we should as adults. I think that's the honest truth. I can't blame them for everything, because you know what happens? They get embraced by the wrong people. And they don't care how they look. They don't care how they're talking. They don't care how they're dressed or anything like that. But we want to turn our noses up at them, you know what I mean? Act like we're afraid of them. Like, how could she possibly wear that outfit? You know what I mean? When most of our parents didn't like how we dressed when we was younger either. That's the truth. The generation before you don't like how the generation after them dress, act, talk. That's what happens. But sometimes we have short-term memory. Right. So they're going through so much right now, and I can't criticize them when they're acting out, when they feel nobody else is willing to take them on and help them out. So that's one thing that we have to do, because we're losing them. We're losing our young people right now, and we're losing them by the truckloads. You know, and if it's not going to get better before it gets worse. So we definitely have to figure out something.
Dr. Freeman?
Yeah, I just want to close it out with,
Microphone.
I will say this. In addition to what they all just said, an important word that I would like to throw out here is patience. We've lost patience. It's one thing, yes, we have our fears. We are afraid of who they've become and not understanding them. Their language have changed. We don't relate to them well. We're critical. They don't understand. They don't respect us. They're not showing the old school respect, you know, be seen and not heard, and all those types of things that we were raised under. It's patience. You have to formulate a way to communicate that will allow them to open up, that will allow them to feel comfortable enough to have a conversation with you without judgment. So when I work with young people, I have a strategy when I approach them, because the first thing I'm going to talk about is not what they're not doing. It's what they are doing right first. And allow the conversation to develop to the point where I am impatient as I listen to everything that's coming, active listening to everything that's coming out of their mouths, so that I can then interpret what to do next based on what they've said. You see, all of us know how to address issues. We're problem solvers. Once you know what the issue is, you can work on a solution, right? You just tell me what the problem is and let me help you. A lot of times we're trying to help without listening. I didn't ask you for all that. What I need you to do is hear what I'm saying and then offer the solution based on what I'm telling you. So patience is important.
I have a quick word I want to add. She mentioned the word patience. I think it's a very important word. I think another really important word to add to that is love. I think love is the most powerful thing in the universe. And I found that kids respond very strongly to those that they know love them. And one of the things that taught me a lot about children and parenting and all that, and I raised one child, but I have some others that I just kind of scooped up along the way. And you know, I remember one day one of my daughters called me, and she was crying, and she told me about this little boy she babysat who was about 3 years old, and the little boy had been shot in the head. And I didn't understand how a 3-year-old child could get shot in the head, so I asked her, I said, so what happened? And she told me what happened, and the boy's mother had gotten into an argument with a neighbor. The mother was maybe about 20 years old. The neighbor was about 19. So I guess he was a wannabe gangster, so he went home and he got a gun, and he came back and he fired off and unloaded the clip into the house. And he didn't care who he hit. He was just shooting at the house, and he didn't know that there were 10 kids inside the house playing at the time. So the little boy got shot in the head, and he died about 3 days later after his brain had swollen to the point where he passed. And when I heard the story, I remember I cried, and I didn't cry just for the 3-year-old who died. I cried for that little boy that killed him. And I realized that at our age, you can remember just a few years ago, that 19-year-old gangster was also an innocent, loving, sweet, kind 3-4-year-old child who could have been anything. He could have become the next black president. He could have become an attorney, doctor, lawyer, whatever. But he could have become anything we wanted him to become. But somehow the world shaped him into the monster who could go unload a clip of bullets into a house full of kids. And And when I retraced that and I played back the VCR of life, which only moves forward, it doesn't have a rewind button, I thought about the fact that when this child was growing up, there's a very good chance that when he reached out for us to love him, all we fed him was hate. When he needed somebody to embrace him, we neglected him. When he looked to us to lift him up, we only crushed his soul. So he went from becoming a sweet, loving, innocent child who could have become anything to a 19-year-old killer who unloads a clip into a house full of kids. And so what I figured out right then is this, that when God puts a child in front of you who does not have a parent, we always say, well, look at the parents, look at the parents. What if they don't have any parents? When that child is in front of you and that child has no parental guidance, then that is your obligation to step in to provide the love that that child needs. Because whether you choose to act or choose not to act, there will be a ripple effect. What you put into that child takes into the world, and you don't have to have a child in order to be a parent. So I encourage you to remember that, because I guarantee you that if somebody has stepped in and been a parent to that little boy, he never would have killed that 3-year-old child. He would have protected him and loved him instead of killed him. And those are the ripple effects that we're seeing in our community.
In talking about the Shanquisha video, Steve, whatever her name is, Sharkeisha, my bad. Steve talked about he's not angry at her, it's her parents. And that made me think about when my son was about 4, I was down in my office working on an article, and he came downstairs and he said, "Daddy, I'm ready." And I said, "Ready for what?" And he said, "Ready to do my show." And I'm typing. I said, "Oh, okay. As we will tend to say, go talk to your mother." So I'm working. He comes downstairs about 30 minutes later, got a sport coat on and a tie. And he says, "Daddy, I'm ready." I said, "Ready for what?" "Ready to do my show. Just like you on CNN with Lou Dobbs." In that moment, it hit me. Children are like sponges. I mean, we hear that all the time. But he, even at 4 years old, was paying attention to everything I do. So if I'm sitting on the couch, drinking a 40 and smoking a blunt, then he's going to sit on the couch and drink a 40 and smoke a blunt. But if he sees his father reading, and sees his father writing, and sees his father loving his mother, then he will most likely think that reading and writing and loving his mother is the right thing to do. So I took him upstairs and we set up the tripod and mic'd him up, and he interviewed he interviewed our niece who was living with us at the time, and he did his show. And now, if any of you all happen to hear my show from time to time, the little voice that closes the show every Saturday that he's with me in the studio is number 4. And he's just doing what I do. And our kids are doing what we do.
Let me, if I may, one of the things, we didn't all come up here for a love fest to agree on everything. So this is where I step in. I don't think it's ever a good idea to put a child in a situation where they have parents who are not necessarily as effective as we want them. And how nice would it be if everyone could grow up in a bucolic community where everything was hunky-dory. But that ain't what it really looks like. And I submit to you that while it is important for us to have positive home role models, the fact is that much of what's happening to our community is happening within our schools. We're being crushed in our own schools by the weight of our own public education system. There's an over-feminization of primary education, whereby black boys and Latino boys are made to stop raising their hands by the time they're 2nd and 3rd grade. They think school ain't really for them. They don't really feel like they have a place in this system. And so children who were fired up about going to school when they were 3 and 4 years old, practicing doing homework because their older brothers and sisters were doing homework, getting their new Trapper Keeper together and new sneakers to run faster, somewhere along the way stopped liking school because they believe school doesn't like them. I believe it's so easy for us to demonize sisters who are raising kids by themselves. It's just so damn easy. But it's not the facts. The facts are that just because you grow up in a single-parent household doesn't mean it has to go terribly wrong. I was born on my mother's 16th birthday. Just because your father goes to prison doesn't mean you have to follow behind him, as mine has. I recognize that we can create a more compelling experience through our, you know, we use so many cliches about communities and villages. I'm telling you right now, your local school can be that place when it's run right. When a kid, a job of an educator is really like a magician. They have this capacity to reach into the child's mind and convince him that he can be something that he never imagined before. Even if that something is something bad. We have to own our mess as a community, no doubt. We could all be better parents. I'll grab a fistful of shirt in a minute. But that's not where it's falling down. We're sending our children to places that we trust they will be educated and prepared for the next part in life, and they're not. There's no one that can tell me because a child lives in a particular zip code that they're less intelligent than another. You just can't convince me of that. Last time I checked, children are still manufactured the same way they've always been. And since that's the case, we keep allowing conversations around poverty and parenting to wash away what really is the real issue. We send our send our children to places that they're not loved and respected and treated like they're supposed to be. They come home not one day smarter. You ask them, what'd you learn today in school? What do they say?
Nothing.
No.
All over the country. And they're not lying. The data is too clear. Why is there an achievement gap between black children and white children? Because black children are less intelligent? Because black parents are worse parents? I mean, come on, we can't let that dog hunt forever. At some point, we have to recognize that there's a hole in the system. It's called our schools. It really is. The difference between many people's lives is where they went to school. I mean, it really boils down to that. And that cannot be determined by the ball in the lottery. We have to begin to fight sometimes the very people who we thought were always on our side. We're so quick to give every vote to a Democrat. So quick to jump behind anybody who says that they're in a union. But do we ever decide to ask them, damn, man, when's the last time you did something for us? I sure would like to look at your record for real. And so we can focus on the outliers, the parents who are insane. Look, I'm a principal. Don't get it twisted. I've had the mothers, I'm bringing down my husband. Hey, number one, he ain't your husband. B, number two, leave that little man at home. Or he gets sent out the way he came in. Don't think that that doesn't, I don't think that I'm saying, yes, grown people, y'all could be aggravating, no doubt. But the real issue is we have a system that is fundamentally flawed to constantly suspend, expel, and punish black and Latino boys, to constantly and consistently undereducate people of color, has since its inception. If we don't do something about it, then we have nothing else to discuss. Game over. You can pump all the money into the community. You can talk about giving everybody free lunch, all the things you want to do. But if they cannot read, write, and compute anywhere near grade level, there are schools here in D.C. in which 5–10% of the kids are reading at grade level. It's a 90% fail rate. Enough has to be enough. Y'all got to say, I'm tired of this. I'm not giving you another one of my children, because I believe every single parent sends us the very best child that they have in their house, and every single parent is doing the absolute best that they can. Doesn't mean that I think it's the best. Doesn't mean that I think it's the best. But I think everybody's doing the best they can. It's just our schools have failed us miserably.
James Morton. James, you sir. James Morton. What is the deficit model approach to black identity and activism, and what is its impact?
So The deficit model approach to black identity is the thing that gets you on these kind of panels all over the country. I could sit up here and give you negative statistics about black people till the sun comes up tomorrow morning, guaranteed. The deficit model is part of what I'm kind of pushing against and what I call the not-for-profit industrial complex. So what you know and what your formulation around what it means, from a statistical standpoint, what it means to be black is probably very, very negative. So if I were to ask anybody in this room to give me one positive statistic about black people, it would be a hard-pressed conversation. But if I say, give me something negative, you know, we go all day. Everybody knows how bad everything is. And at this juncture, I wrote a piece for Ebony a couple of years ago, and it got me in a lot of, I stay in trouble. Terry Glover, a dear woman who passed away last year, she said to me, I get what you're trying to say now. You're not saying that we don't have problems. What you're trying to say is that we have to shine the light on our greatness along with those problems. And that's a tough thing for us to do because it's kind of a twisted reverse psychology that we have. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was the guy that proved that there have never been more black men in jail than in college. Never. It's never happened. Never been true. But some special interest organization comes out with a flawed study and tells you that, and we go to the barbershop and the beauty salon and the CNN and everybody else and say, oh, Lord Jesus, God help us, save us. It's more black men in jail than it is in college. Right? I'm from Palmer Park. Don't even try it. Don't even try. I see the looks. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Glenn Arden haircut the other day. So, but this is everywhere over the country, and I said our generation has done a disservice to the younger generation. So Etan talked about how we uplift and elevate and encourage and not constantly berate and tell them, you don't know your history, you don't know where you came from, pull your damn pants up. They heard that. Do you know that you and your generation, despite being given the greatest handicap in the history of blacks in this country, is enrolling in college at a higher rate than any time ever? Do you know that this is the bar of expectation that we want to drive you to. One out of three of you, 18 to 24, is not going to jail. You are going to college right now. That's where we are. What if we begin to frame our conversation differently around this generation and tell them that they are phenomenal when they are? And the statistics, like right now, I cannot get this story out. It drives me freaking crazy. Right now, as we sit here today, 50 blah years past Brown versus Board of Education, black women enroll in college more than any other group in this country, including the Asians. More. Yeah. And it's not even close. A full percentage point, 9.6% are enrolled in college of a group, and 8.6 are Asian men. A full point ahead. Where's the press release? Where's the pat on the back? Steve is complimenting single mom. Well, God bless America for the ones that are 30, because that demographic is what they're doing. They went to school, they gone back. We have got to see ourselves through a different lens. Because if we go through the lens of the deficit, of our inadequacies, of our shortcomings, of our less than, you can join the Klan. They got those all day, all on the boards. You really can. They can tell you how bad black people are. At this juncture in our history, I believe that there is some greatness that is emerging that we need to give to one another to begin to see ourselves with clarity in our entire mosaic that will give a renewed message, a renewing of the heart, mind, and soul to people that I think is dying or desperate for over 400 years. Actually, take it back to Nimrod. That's how long black folks have been castigated in this world. So that's what the deficit model, to see black people as inadequate first without their greatness.
And unfortunately, to that, it permeates our politics.
Everything.
In terms of, there's a whole dynamic that is to a great degree pushed by conservatives, but unfortunately it does get supported by some in the Democratic camp, of blaming the poor for their plight.
Right. It's not. I would like to stay apolitical, on this? Because it's both. The Republicans don't care, and what pisses me, can I say piss?
Yep. Sure can.
After you said it.
What pisses me off to no avail is the low expectations based upon, you know, my skewed perception of who you are as a white. The liberals see you as inadequate, so I got to help you out. Get out of my way. I am not a black man that you have. No one has ever in the history of the human condition. Black people, take this one home, take it to the bank. In the human condition, no other group has ever elevated another group to equality. It just doesn't happen. If you think that the white man's ice is colder and that's where you need to go look at the Asian data first. But they will never bring you to equality. It just doesn't happen. And us looking for, you know, the Deus Ex Machina is this concept that God is coming. It's just not going to happen. So it's back on us, and what are we going to do? And what I'm saying is, as Steve said it earlier, if you could see the beauty of what we see out here on a Sunday night when my Skins are playing, probably losing by now, that we have every single wedge of resource we need to begin to change this conversation, to begin to start, but we have to see the beauty as well as the shortcomings first. So I'm going to shut up. I'm sorry.
A quick point about equality. I love what he said about equality.
Go ahead.
And the equality thing, I think, is an important conversation because, you know, the last time I checked, nobody ever gives you equality. I mean, just the idea that you would look to the descendants of your historical oppressors to validate you and to give you the things you need to feed your children, educate your children, that is a mental illness. That's sick. And you know, and when we started doing these panels, which honestly, it was just sort of a spark of God that made me just say, okay, let's try this. Let's see how it goes. I'm not an event planner. I didn't know if it was going to work. People started comparing it to what Tavis used to do, Tavis Smiley, with the State of the Black Union events, which I thought were very helpful to the community in their own context. And people said, well, you know, they said, well, if you want to pay for this, why don't you go get corporate sponsorship? Go get McDonald's, go get Walmart, go get these corporations to give you the money that you need to go around the country and do this so you don't have to bother people like Steve Perry and Cornel West and ask them to do things for free. And I said, I don't want to bring black leadership brought to you by McDonald's. Okay? The revolution will not be televised and it will not be in a damn Walmart commercial. The fact is that if we're not willing to pay the cost for our own freedom, then we do not deserve to be free. Period.
Eton. Yes, sir. You've started your fatherhood movement traveling across the country, your book, your CD, and you and Jenks may want to get into a debate. The statistics can't be denied that kids from broken homes do worse in every category: teenage, pregnancy, dropout, in a gang, just much more likely to fail. With this reality and so many young people growing up in broken homes, talk about the chances.
Well, as Steve said earlier, it doesn't have to be that way. You know, no matter what the statistics say, you don't have to fall into that category. I think that one thing that we have to do is uplift our young people to know that they don't have to fall into that category. When you lower the expectations and they think that that's all they're going to become, then that's what they become. You know what I mean? But if you speak life into them, you know, show them positive examples. It's interesting because when we're doing these panels, I bring the different guys from all walks of life, and that's what I wanted to do in the book, was get men from all walks of life that young people will recognize, whether they're rappers or actors or athletes or whoever, and they tell them their stories, because you don't really know how somebody got to where they are. You know what I mean? You see the end part. You know, you see Kevin Durant on the court. You know, you hear Talib Kweli and Styles P in the studio and their albums, and you know, see Taye Diggs and in the movies and stuff like that. But you don't know how they got there. You don't know. You know what I mean? And people have had to overcome a lot that we're not shown. You know, the only thing that you'll hear about athletes, you'll hear all the negative, all the bad people, all the people that did something terrible, all the 8 baby mamas, all the worst stories that you could possibly hear. That'll be what they show you as the norm. They'll have you thinking that basketball wives is really how athletes' wives really act. You know, my wife does not act like that. She does not, at all. You know what I mean? And I mean, there's always an element that you see like that, but it's not everybody. You know, I mean, if you hear the stories, and they'll be on the top of Sports Center. You know what I mean? The main outlets. And if an athlete does something wrong, they're plastered right on the top, right? So then you start thinking, oh, well, all these athletes are doing all this terrible stuff. They all having babies out of wedlock. They all having 8 or 9 baby mamas. They all doing all, and same with the rappers. You know what I mean? That's what you would think, but that's not reality. So you have to know that what you're given is not the truth. But if we start thinking that everything that they were given is the truth, then we start getting all messed up. It's funny because I was talking to my son, and he was learning about the Christopher Columbus thing. He was like, well, Dad, how can somebody discover something when there's people already here? I was like, you're right. So what does that tell you? He's like, well, they kind of invaded it, like Avatar, and he was like the Fire Nation, like invaded the Water Tribe. Anybody that has kids know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So, but I was like, yes, that's what happens. So what does that tell you? You can't always just take in what you're given as being the truth. Then we started talking about Thanksgiving. He's like, well, did this really happen where the Native Americans, and they were all cool, and they were sitting down, and it was all peaceful and loving like they I was like, what do you think? He was like, no. So what point did they start killing all of them? So he's asking all of these questions because I'm telling him, listen, you gotta, everything that you're, it's like in the movie Malcolm X when Elijah Muhammad poured the water in the glass. And then he put the iodine in there, and then he said, you know, if you give this to the people, they have no choice but to drink it. Then he poured the other glass, and he's like, if you give them this option, you know what I mean, then they can make their choice. Well, we're only giving one option of ourselves in the media. You know what I mean? They're only giving us one option about who we are as a people, about what we can do, about what our possibilities are. And our young people are feeling it. So when they see all the negativity all the time thrown at them, on the radio, on movies, on the news or whatever, there's a reason why all of the negative hip-hop is what's played on the radio all the time, 24 hours a day. There's a reason for that. There's not just all negative rappers. There's a lot of positive rappers. But they'll play all the negative stuff non-stop. The worst possible images of our women telling themselves that this is who you are. So they're going and thinking, okay, well, that's what I have to be successful. I have to be like that. I got to show my body. I got to get some fake everything, and I got to, you know, I'll just say everything, you know, fake everything, and I got to just keep doing all of this stuff to be able to get a man to pay any attention to me, and it starts early. The worst thing on earth is to see a young person emulate what they see on TV, and you know exactly where they got it from. That's the worst thing on earth, but we're not telling our young people how special they are. You know, we did a panel at Rikers Island, right? And we told the young people how special they are and how it was a group like this, all of young people under 18 that all looked like me. It was terrible to see. You know what I mean? And I said, listen, y'all deserve better than this. This ain't living. Somebody telling you when to eat, when to sleep, when you can see your family, all of this stuff, that's not living. Y'all deserve better than this. And they looked at us like it was something that they had never heard before. That nobody ever told them, like, what do you mean we deserve better than this? This is where we're kind of supposed to be. That's how they looked at us. That's our fault. Because we got to tell them how important they are, how special they are, what rich heritage and history they come from. Because when you know your history and you know your heritage, then you know you're part of something bigger. You know you have a tradition that you're carrying on. You can see yourself if we only allow our schools to educate our children, then they're not really educated.
That's right.
That's what it is. That's the honest truth. Good school or bad school. If that's the only education they receive, because they're not being told about themselves. We got to pump our young people up so that when they see all these negative images, when they hear all these people tell them how if they come from a broken home that they're probably going to end up dead or in jail or to drop out or pregnant or something terrible, they can know instantly that, no, that's not going to be me. I'm going to defy the odds, whatever the odds are. But that's what they have to do. They can't let it soak in and say, oh, well, I'm going to go in this direction, so this is probably what's meant for me, which is what's happening now. So we got to pump our young people up. We can't, and I can't say it enough that we can't just criticize them. We have to lift them up as well. That's what we have to do if we want anything to get better. If we just criticize them, we're going to just keep losing them.
So we're losing, right? No matter what my partner says, we're losing by a lot. And you could run around happy-go-lucky all you want, but I'm telling you, we getting our asses beat, and we down a lot, and this is a locker room speech. We can't come out the second half the way we went in the first one. So where we are right now is we have to decide. You got to be thinking to yourself right now, so hold on, because you don't ask us, because I don't know what you know how to do. I don't know what you know how to do. Well, what should I do? I don't know. But you should do something. Tomorrow, tonight, you got to do something, and that's really what this has to be about. When Brother Boyce and I spoke about this, I said, I ain't going all the way down anywhere just to talk, because that's not cool. We got to come out with something. Right? So tonight, please, as we have a conversation, I'm not in charge of who gets called on, but I will call in because I really like your outfit. Think of what you know how to do. Think of what you know how to do, the thing that keeps you up at night, the thing that makes you want to do something, that thing right there, and throw it in the pile, man. We need all hands on deck. We are losing.
You know, when we were in Brooklyn, we were asked, somebody asked the question, what organizations should we support? What things should we do? Tell us, as we leave this room, where we should go. And my answer was, I don't know, because I don't know your circumstance. So I may tell you that the place for you to go is the PTA, but you may not have a child in school. I may tell you that, the place for you to go is to your homeowners association, but you may not have a home. So, you may live in an apartment, or you may, live in a box. But, so to your point, Steve, it's you can do something and get off of the bench and get in the game. And it's amazing how what you deem to be a little thing, an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours in a week, can have a tremendous amount of impact. And you wind up touching people that you didn't even realize that you were touching, until one day you're walking down through a mall and you see some little kid that comes up to you and says, hey, you were in our school. Thank you. You're like, well, who is this kid? Never even saw him in the hallway. But it made an impact. So the solutions, what are the solutions? Well, the solutions are for some of y'all to figure out based upon your circumstance. Tawana?
Okay, so it looks a little something like this. Everyone in this room, how many of you are small business owners? All right. So every last one of you who are small business owners, you have a passion for delivering a service or a product to the community somehow, for goods in exchange, right, for dollars. You did that based on the fact that you saw a need and you wanted to fulfill that need, right? You saw an issue, you wanted to address it. The same way as it works in the community. If there is something that you see that resonates with you, a problem that absolutely drives you crazy every time you see it, something that pisses you off, that you wish that if you could get in arm's reach, you would absolutely shake it or fix it. Those are the things that you're called to address. See, one of the things that I'm skilled at doing as a life coach and as a business strategist, the one thing that I'm very good at is helping people to understand how to fine-tune those things. So in this room, if you're a small business owner, you know how to apply that. If you are a productive citizen and you make a good living, you have 9 to 5, or you're an educator and you're always giving and you're so tired of giving, you need to take a break, take time out, because you're giving, you're not seeing results. And what happens in that situation is that you need to separate yourself from the outcome, because if you are not getting results in the thing that you are actively participating in and driving in, if you're not getting results, you're in the wrong strain. You need to be getting results. If you are not, if you have a child in a school, Dr. Perry, and your child is not producing, You see, based on a report card, interims, all that kind of stuff, you see that something is wrong, it's broken. You actively go in and you address it. Start at the top and you work down. Start with the teachers and work up. However it functions. We're in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia. There are more nonprofits in this area than I think there could be between here and the West Coast. We have a ton of nonprofits. We have lots of churches. We have tons of food banks. We can volunteer until we turn blue. It's not about volunteering anymore. It's about effective change, by putting your hands into something that you know. For the people that's in this room, you know what it is that you can do. You know what it is that drives you crazy, that you want to address. So you need to fine-tune that and get very specific. When I say specific, I mean simple as this. I want to work with women, the age is of 25 to 30, who are living in Hyattsville, Maryland, who have kids, who parents or sons or parents are incarcerated. So specific. Identify your target. If you are a small business owner, you know what that means. You identify the target market. The same thing with volunteering. You absolutely have to know the color of the hair of what it is that you're trying to do. And if you can't tell me who you are trying to help, then don't go out here and making a mess, because you're going to make it hard for me. Don't go out here and start stirring up stuff and trying to do a little over here and a little over here and a little over here. You're making a mess. It's like when you're in the kitchen cooking. Honey, I did not ask you to boil the water and go over here and start this and do all that. You done messed up the whole kitchen. The dinner's going to be off. I need you to stay in your lane. Basically, you don't know how to cook. Get out the kitchen. So identify what it is that you're good at. That's what you have to do. And that's real talk with yourself, having a conversation, even with the people that you care about who know what your best skills are. Have that conversation and get very specific and take action. Or call. Call me. Email me. I'll help you.
And two, find a friend. Find someone that has a similar concern, a similar interest as you do.
Right.
And the 2 or 3 of you in your community. Put your arms around. And how many of y'all have one of these? I think they're called smartphones, right? Well, use your smartphone to make you smarter. Stop sending me all of this crap in emails and all of this foolishness and silliness. Start sending some people some information that they can actually use to improve their circumstance. You know, prayers are great. Can't go nowhere without them. But if that's all you're sending me on this so-called smartphone, you can communicate with China. You have the ability with this thing in your hand to impact the world through Facebook and other social media. And too many of us are just using it for foolishness.
I want to add to that point.